Okay, today what we want to talk about is we want to talk about using percents. But first thing before we go any further is we need to go ahead and talk about some of the basics that we may have forgotten. So first thing we need to talk about is how to change a percent to a decimal. To change a percent to a decimal, you need to divide by 100. Okay, that's the number. Remember, percent means part of 100. So whenever we need to do this, we just go ahead and divide by 100. Another way we can look at it is move the decimal to the left. Okay, so for 75%, I could do 75 divided by 100, or I can remember that my decimal's right here, move it 1, 2 places, and I end up with 0.75. No matter how I do it, whether I use my calculator or I move my decimal, you're going to end up with 0.75. Now, some of us look at 5.2% and we say it's already in decimal form, not with that percent symbol there. So we can do 5.2 divided by 100, or take your decimal, go 1, 2 to the left, and you're going to end up with 0. Remember, I put that egg in the basket, 0.52. What I would suggest that you do at this point is use your calculator. This is a calculator portion of the SOL, so why not use it? 327%, divide that by 100, and I end up with 3.27. Okay, now all of these are in decimal form. Okay, they don't have a percent symbol after them. They're in what we officially call decimal form. Now, if you would please go ahead and try 27%, 3.8%, and 415% on your own. Pause the video if you need to. To find a percent of a number, we have 2 steps that we need to do. Okay, so if I'm looking at what is 12% of 75, step 1, change the percent to a decimal. All right, so step 1 is I'm going to say 0.12. This is the work. I'm showing the work over here. Okay, this is the work that I would want to see. And then step 2 is to multiply. Okay, I'm just using that symbol. Multiply that decimal to 75. So it's going to be 0.12 times 75. 0.12 times 75. And you're going to get an answer of 9. Okay, so the answer is going to be 9. We found 12% of 75 to be 9. If you would please, on your own, find 6% of 50 and 5.5% of 90. Go ahead and do that now. Use our notes to help you. Moving on, tax and tip. All right, so first of all, tax and tip are always added. Okay, these are things that get added to the bill. So if I said, what is the cost of the meal with the tip added on, then you would, or with the tip, you would add it on. Tax is always added to something. When your parents pay tax, they have to give it away. But generally when we're talking about taxes, we're figuring out what the store is adding on to the cost of the things that you're purchasing. Okay, so when it says, what is 6% tax on $57? It's not asking what the $57 is with it. It's just asking for just the tax. So really what this type of problem is it's just finding the percent of a number. That's all it's saying. So I'm going to use the exact same steps that I used up above. Change the percent to a decimal. So 6% is going to be 0.12. 0.06, all right, 0.06. I divided it by 100. 6 divided by 100, I got 0.06. And step 2 would be multiply 257. So 0.06 times 57. And I do that on my calculator. And I'm going to get an answer of 3.42. Okay, that's an equal sign there if you're wondering what I'm writing. Okay, so 0.06 times 57. I don't have to add anything on. Okay, it's just asking what would be the tax of a $57 item if the tax was 6%. Then we kick it up a notch. Okay. And so now we have the cost of a $26.50 item after you add 5.5% tax. So step 1, still doing the exact same thing. Change percent to a decimal. Are you seeing a pattern here? Anytime you see a percent, we want to change it to a decimal. If you're having a hard time changing percent to a decimal, what I want you to do is I want you to put a little question mark right here. If you're having a hard time, listen to what I'm saying. If you're having a hard time changing a percent to a decimal, put a question mark right here. That way we can work on that a little bit better in class, okay? All right, so to change 5.5%, I do 5.5 divided by 100, and I get 0.055. All right, step 2, I'm going to multiply that 0.055 to 26.50. So 0.55 times 26.50. And I get 1.4575. Now, we need to remember our rules for rounding. First of all, money only goes out 2 decimal places. So I need to stop right here after the 5. That's where I need to stop. Now I need to look at this 7 that's beside my 5. Okay? Remember our rules for rounding. If it's 4 and below, the 5 stays the same. If it's 5 and above, the 5 goes up. So does that 7 make the 5 go up, or does it stay the same? It's going to make it go up. So 1.45 gets rounded to 1.46. That 7 made it go up. All right. So that's just an extra step that we need to be ready to do. Okay. We're going to round it. Always go out 2 decimal places and round it. Or like maybe you've heard in the past, round it to the hundredths place, because that's what we're doing in order to get the correct money amount. Step 3. Okay. Step 3. What we want to do in step 3 is we want to add, all right, 1.46 to 26.50. All right, we're going to take that amount that we have right here and add it to 26.50. So I'm just going to say to 26.50. And my answer is going to be, and of course use your calculator if you want, 27.96. That's it. Okay, so tip is essentially the same thing. All right, so it says, how much is a 15% tip after a $26 meal? Here's your step. What I want you to do is use your notes that you just completed when we were talking about tax, okay? First thing we did with tax is we just found the percent, okay? Okay, that's the first thing you're going to do here, is just find the percent. The second thing that we're going to do is it's asking the total cost after the item. And so the second problem with taxes, or I'm sorry, with tip is, what is the total cost of the meal after adding 20%? When you see total cost, generally that means we want to go ahead and add to it. Okay, so try those two tip problems on your own. Pause the video if you need to. I'm going to go ahead and move on to discount. Now, it says the first question I have is, what is 25% discount on $57? So the first step I need to do is change 25% to a decimal. So I have 0.25. And of course, I want you to write down the steps too. The steps that you're using, I'm sorry, up above, I'm referring up above. The steps that you're using for tax are the exact same steps that you would have. The steps that you used for tax are the same steps that you're using for these tip problems up above. Step 2 is we're going to multiply. I don't know why I'm writing the whole word out, to 57. You can put the 2 zeros on the end. You don't really need to. Those are just placeholders. So 0.25 times 57, and I know I'm using the times sign. I'm being very bad. Let me erase that. And I'll put a dot in there. So 57 times 0.25, or 0.25 times 57, you get 14.25. All it's asking for is what is the amount of discount. That's why I'm stopping right there. Now, the next is, what is the cost of a $26.50 item after you subtract a 12.5% discount? I said 12.5% because 0.5 is the same as a half. So that's why I'm using that term. So step 1, change percent to a decimal. You say, well, it already is a decimal. No, it's not. That percent symbol says it's in percent form. It happens to be a percent that has a decimal in it. Decimal form means that we're taking it out of that form right there. So 12.5% is going to equal 0.125. There we are. We've changed it to a decimal. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply by 2650. So 0.125 times 2650. That's where we use our calculator. And I got 3.3125. Remember, I can only go out 2 decimal places. That 2 says that 1 stays the same, so I end up with 3.31. And step 3, now, because it even says it in the problem, and discount means subtract. So I'm going to subtract the amount of my discount. In this case, it's 3.31 from 2650. So I'm going to say, so I can't just write that 2650 underneath there. You got to start with 2650, subtract 3.31. So 2650 minus 3.31 is 23.19. And that would be our answer. Thank you.